Here's a line I've heard 1,000 times, or some variation of it. Somebody stands in front of me and says, "I'm just not an athletic person." They don't say it like a confession. They say it like they're telling me the weather. It's like flat or settled, a fact about the world, not just a claim about themselves. I've had 41-year-old men say it to me who've been saying some variation of it for almost 30 years. For a long time, early on, I did what everybody else did. I heard the belief, and when you hear a belief that you disagree with, you reach for an argument. So I'd pull out the evidence, the before and afters, the physiology, the "you'd be surprised what your body can do" kind of pep talk. And it never worked, not even once. It took me years to understand why. That sentence, "I'm not athletic," or I have a slow metabolism, whatever the flavor is, was never a belief. I was treating it like an idea in somebody's head, and it isn't in their head, it's in their body. They're not telling me what they think. They're describing a body that is describing itself. What took even longer to realize was that the changes people sought were not mental at all, at least initially. Coaching people to move differently eventually exposed something shocking to me, and that is that the language would change, but only after the body did. This was from watching bodies change for years, from the observation that movement changes how you feel and feeling changes how you think. And then I read a book by a French sociologist not too long ago who'd arrived at the same place from the opposite end of the earth, sitting in libraries studying social class, and he'd named the thing decades before I had even picked up a barbell. This episode is about what happens when those two roads meet. You can't think your way into this. You move the idea with action, or it stays a simple idea. I lived the application, built my own crude version, and I was just recently realized I was not alone in my observation. Here's my version. Almost every coach, every program, every piece of fitness advice ever written runs on one hidden assumption about how a person works. It goes, think, then feel, then do. You think you should train. At some point, you feel like it. And because you feel like it, you do it. People sit and wait for this mysterious motivation to descend and move them, and it doesn't come. And a body that never gets moved becomes a body that knows it doesn't move. I watched that fail in front of me for years. One of the most common reasons people never change. They think they should. They wait to feel like it. The feeling never arrives. They're standing at the bottom of a staircase waiting for motivation to come down and carry them up. It never shows. And they decide something's wrong with them. They lack discipline. They're just not the kind of person who does this. The arrow is pointing the wrong way. It doesn't go think, feel, do. For most people, walking in cold, it runs the other direction. Move. The moving changes how you feel, and how you feel changes how you think. Only then is the thinking useful because it has been concretized by the subconscious. You don't think your way into moving. You move your way into thinking. The action comes first before you feel like it, especially when you don't feel like it. And the movement manufactures the state everybody else is waiting around for. The feeling is on the far side of the doing, not this side. You'll never feel ready. Readiness is something the movement hands you. It's not something that you bring. Now, this is exactly the distinction I draw between exercise and training. And I need to be careful here because people get it backwards or they misunderstand me, including the early version of myself. One is not better than the other. They run in opposite directions and they do almost opposite jobs. So here's the concise breakdown. Training is using your psychological and sensational capability to alter your physiological state. Exercise is using your physical capability to alter your psychological and emotional state. So listen to that again or rewind it because the whole thing lives in those two sentences. Training runs inside out. Intention and sensation drag the body towards a new physical capacity. Exercise runs outside in. You move the body and the movement changes how you feel and then how you think. That arrow I just spent the last few minutes on, move, then feel, then think, That is exercise. Action, feeling, thought, and I'm not putting it down by calling it that. Exercise is where you start. It's the apprenticeship. You initiate movement without waiting to be motivated. The movement shifts your state, and doing that over and over builds the one thing you don't have yet, a real sense of your own body, real agency over your own state. That intuition is the entire mechanism of training. Without it, training isn't available to you because training is the harder, top-down version, thought, feeling, action, and it only works once you've built the instrument to steer it. You drive an internal signal down into the tissue saying, biologically, this is not enough, become more. Most people can't do that yet, and they don't fail for lack of effort. They fail because they can't reliably steer their own psychological state, let alone the emotional context. And that steering is not only the whole game, it is what can give meaning to life. The modern overly intellectualized citizen sends a signal from the top and it never reaches the bottom. What they're actually doing, if they are doing anything at all, is exercise. And that's fine, except nobody told them it was exercise. So they stand there expecting adaptations that only training produces and wondering why years of honest work changes nothing. Even worse, there are a battery of authors, coaches, self-help gurus, and charlatans ready to instill more top-down mental programming framed as the fix for your motivational ills. Only recently have I been able to say this part clearly. Exercise isn't just the on-ramp to training. Exercise is how the body gets built in the first place. It's accumulation, slow, mostly unconscious, laid down rep after rep, year after year under the level of decision. You're not strategizing your way to a new body. You're exposing yourself to enough movement for long enough that a new body quietly accrues. Training is what you can do once that body exists. Training is leverage. It's deploying the instrument you spent years accumulating, bending your own physiology to your will, because the foundation is finally there to bend. So think about real wealth, not the striver, the born into it kind, the people who move through money and rooms and connections like water, who bend situations to their will without seeming to try. They didn't strategize their way into that. They got it the way you get a first language, subconscious exposure early for years until it became the body they walked around in. That's their exercise. That's the accumulation nobody sees. And the network, the connections, the deploying of capital to get what they want, that's their training, the leverage. And it only works because the foundation was laid so far back they don't even remember laying it. This is why you can study how wealth in generational levels can dissipate and come back to those who embody it. It is also why the poor who win the lottery almost always lose it in their lifetime. Now watch what the striver does. Somebody who made the money instead of being born into it. They try to use the money like leverage, try to deploy it the way the born wealthy deploy theirs, and it doesn't take the same. The right room still clocks them because they're running training logic on a habitus that was never accumulated. They're trying to leverage a foundation they don't have. You cannot deploy capital you never built, and you cannot train your way into a self the exercise never laid down. That's the same error in the gym, almost exactly. The person trying to train, trying to command their body, top down, drive the signal, bend their physiology, before they've done the years of exercise that builds the body capable of being commanded, trying to leverage what they never accumulated. It doesn't take, and they can't figure out why, because from the outside, it looks like they're doing everything right. So the order is fixed and you can't skip it. Exercise accumulates to make the body by changing the feeling that rewrites the thought pattern. Training leverages the body by using psychology and often overriding the feeling. Both keep their place forever. You don't graduate out of one, but you can't run the second on a foundation that the first never built. That's where I'd gotten on my own from years on the floor watching others train, and I thought it was mine. Then I found Bourdieu. Pierre Bourdieu was a French sociologist who died in 2002. His whole career sat on a question that sounds like it has nothing to do with this or any of fitness. How does social class reproduce itself? How do the rich stay rich and the poor stay poor, generation after generation, even after the laws change, even after somebody actually makes the money? What he found caught me off guard. Class doesn't live in your bank account, it lives in your body. That Observation made his career, and it's wild. Somebody can make all the money in the world, earn it, claw all the way up, and still get clocked as an outsider the second they walk into a room of people born into it, instantly. Not from anything they said, from how they hold themselves, the tension in the body, how they stand, how they sit, what they do with their hands, whether they take up space or shrink from it. You can teach a man the right fork to use, the right clothes to wear, the right words, the right references. The body still gives him away, because a body that grew up striving carries a different tension than a body that grew up certain. And that tension reads instantly to anybody with eyes for it. An unspoken language, one you can't fake because you never chose to learn it in the first place. Even at the top of sport, they've got a name for people who don't have it. A NARP, a non-athletic regular person. It's the same instinct, just a different room. Bourdieu's name for this is habitus, the definition I've worked to get right. It's a set of dispositions a person absorbs from the conditions of their life, how they stand, move, perceive, judge, running almost entirely below conscious awareness. He called it history turned into nature. History turned into nature is such a great way to put it. Your past settled into your body, then mistaken for who you just are, for your nature. It was never nature. It was experience wearing a costume. Here's where it runs straight into everything I'd already figured out. Bourdieu had a tighter term for the part of habitus that lives in the physical body, bodily hexis, and he described it. This is the one thing in this whole episode I'm going to quote word for word because the wording is the point. He said, bodily hexis is political mythology realized, embodied, turned into a permanent disposition, a durable way of standing, speaking, walking, and thereby feeling and thinking. And thereby of feeling and thinking. That is what stopped me after reading it. And read it again. A durable way of standing and walking, and thereby of feeling and thinking. The way you stand produces the way you feel, which produces the way you think. The posture is upstream. The inner state follows it down. That's my arrow that I built watching people in a room moving. He built his studying the French class system in the 70s, but it's the same mechanism. The body is not the output of the self, it's the way in. Movement isn't downstream of who you are. Who you are is downstream of how you move. If the body is the way in and not the mind, a lot of things that look mysterious go clear almost instantaneously. The biggest one, why does information almost never change anybody? Look at how much fitness information exists right now. We're drowning in it. Every protocol, every study, every optimized program, it's free on your phone. I'm part of that flood. I give away all of it, thousands of hours of theory that took me decades to learn, thrown out into the ether, and I do it knowing it does absolutely nothing for the person who absorbs it and thinks that the knowing is the change. Knowledge on fitness and almost every other subject is exploding, but results are shrinking. More information, fewer change bodies. At some point, you have to ask why. Dispositions weren't installed by information, so they can't be removed by information. So when I explain the right way to train, or a book hands you the right way to think, that lands at the level of the conscious belief, the part of you that reasons. The habitus, the thing actually generating your behavior, sits underneath that, and it was never built by reasoning. It was built by 30 years of conditions, so you can pour perfect information across the surface all day, and the engine underneath keeps running the old program. The most well-read person and the least informed one often change at the same rate, which is to say, usually not at all. Knowledge was not the bottleneck. Everybody's been trying to fix a body level problem with a mind level tool. The whole industry is staked on the opposite bet, that you fail for lack of information or willpower. So the fix is always more content, sharper explanation, harder accountability, fighting embodied history with a pamphlet, then blaming you for not reading it hard enough. Knowing the right way to live changes a person about as much as reading a map changes the terrain. So if the industry's selling the wrong tool, what's it selling it for? This brings two big misdirections, and Bourdieu names both: optimization and image. It's the same disease with two different faces. He'd look at modern fitness and see something specific, a relationship to the body he tied to a class position. The body is a project, something you cultivate, refine, display, a status good. Look how I eat, look at my morning routine, look at my recovery stack. The physique as taste made visible. Optimization as proof that you're the kind of person who optimizes. The body becomes the thing you show to people, says something about your discipline, your access, your worth. Underneath all of it, a body arranged to be seen. He put another relationship right next to that one. Instrumental, the body as a means, something you use, something you trust to work when it actually matters, not something you arrange on a shelf. That one's nearly gone from fitness conversation altogether. And the reason is obvious. It can't be photographed. It doesn't confer status. There's no flex in my body quietly does what I need it to do when life demands it. A practitioner trains differently than an optimizer because the optimizer's body is a project to be displayed and the practitioner's is an instrument to be trusted under pressure. Two relationships to the same flesh. The industry sells the first and almost nobody sells the second. The failure runs deeper than vanity, though. The optimization model didn't come from nowhere. It borrowed its blueprint from elite sport. One field, fixed rules, a known competition, and one day to peak for it. That's what sports science is built for. Take a known game with a known demand and squeeze out a few % increase. It also runs on indoctrinating kids into narrow adaptations until they become freaks, for lack of a better word. And they grow up into the people who were entertained and idolized. Then the rest of us go looking for the thing we can adopt that'll send the same signal that we deserve to be idolized too. So we chase the jump number, the weight on the bar, or even the abs. We run a sports performance model the exact same way a kid who grew up with nothing claws towards money and then signals it with a GT3 RS and Python green. A lot of us spent our 20s and 30s building a physicality the world would recognize and approve of in the exact same way that others spent those years making enough money to be noticed and appreciated. And the same thing shows up for both groups. What you were chasing was never for you. It was for how others would see you. And they never will, because the body that strives athletically or financially gets read as an outsider by the exact class you are trying to join. The tension gives you away. It's the striver problem again, trying to leverage a foundation you accumulated too late and too consciously to ever fully pass. Striving isn't wrong, and I should be very clear about that. But notice sooner rather than later that aiming for what some people were simply born with can leave you permanently wanting. Fitness attributes like money are tools that widen what you can do and where you can go. They were never the destination. What you actually want is the thing Bourdieu said a healthy habitus does in the first place. He didn't define a good habitus as a fixed set of correct behaviors. He defined it as a generative capacity, the ability to improvise the right response to a situation nobody rehearsed you for, to act correctly under novel conditions, to meet the unplanned thing well. Is there a better description of real-world capability than that? Not, I can hit my numbers in the conditions I trained for, but I can meet whatever shows up. That is the infinite game I keep coming back to. Training for a life instead of exercising for a photo, the opposite of what optimization culture is selling. If you can't talk a person into changing, if the body's the way in and information's just a map, how does anybody change at all? Because they do. I've watched it, I've caused it, and I've done it to myself. So how? You don't argue with the disposition, you change the field. The core move here, and the thing that I've been doing for years, understanding the power of it, but being unable to describe the right ingredients. You build conditions, an environment where the old disposition stops working, where the way they've always done it stops paying off, and a new response becomes the only way through. Then you let the body discover that response under pressure. You don't explain it. You build the room so the answer is the only door, and the body finds it because it has to. This is why I've spent years obsessed with the building itself, with letting in the right kinds of people, the ones who carry themselves a certain way, who have a certain work ethic and energy. A room full of the right people is the core of what drives the deepest change. Have you ever gone to a dinner with genuinely fit people, then gone to some work thing surrounded by average unfit peers? Notice how each room makes you more or less aware of your own behavior without anyone saying a word? That's the environment working for you or against you. Same machinery Bourdieu was describing, just pointed on purpose. Environment beats willpower every time. Willpower is asking the old self to override itself by force, asking the person you've always been to lose a fight to a person who doesn't exist yet. The old self has no reason to lose that fight. Change the environment and you don't need willpower because the old self's moves just stop working. You rig the room so the old behavior has nowhere to go. That means being around people who already embody the principles or attributes you seek. Want to quit less? Train with people who never do. And here's where most people and most coaches blow it. Changing the field starts the process. It doesn't finish it. And the middle of the process feels exactly like failure. Bourdieu gives us 2 words for the middle. And if you hold on to them, you'll quit on yourself less and quit on the people you love less. The first one is hysteresis, which means there's a lag between when you change the conditions and when the habitus catches up. You change the field today, the body keeps running the old responses for weeks, months even. It's durable. It's built over decades. It doesn't turn over in a week. You lose body fat, lean out, fix a few mobility issues, and even increase strength. But the real changes that are captured on a cellular level that start to influence decisions or thoughts, those are further than the impressive physical shifts. From the inside, it looks like this. You changed everything. New environment, new training, new standards, and you still feel like the old you, still flinch the old ways, still default to the old posture. Every instinct says this isn't working. I changed everything and I'm still me. That feeling isn't failure though. The lag is the change. It's the transitional state of a self mid-transformation. The gap between who you've become on paper and who you still are in your body isn't evidence the change failed. It's the change in progress. It's a cocoon where you expect to see wings. Almost everybody quits right there. They read the lag as the same old thought pattern, but the lag was just the timeline. Then Bourdieu has another term, cleft habitus. It's the divided self. What happens to somebody caught between the disposition they used to have and the one they've glimpsed but haven't become? Split down the middle, half old self, half the thing you're turning into, and the two halves don't agree. Bourdieu knew this one in his own body. Peasant son, rural working class, who climbed into the most elite academic circles in France and never fully belonged in either world again. He was too educated for where he came from, but he was too country for where he landed. Cleft. He lived the whole theory. That split, that uncomfortable in-between, isn't a problem to rush out of. It's the productive state. It's where the change actually happens. My job, coaching someone through it, isn't to make the discomfort go away. It's to hold them inside it. Keep them in the cleft long enough that the new self wins without the discomfort spitting them back into the old self where it feels warm. A new way of living implies a new person, and the old person experiences becoming the new one as a kind of death. Not a metaphor. It literally feels like dying, losing a piece of yourself, because in a real way, the old self is ending. Everything in us flinches from that. The whole art is making the flinch survivable, staying, holding the line through the part that feels like loss. You can't reason a person out of a posture they didn't reason their way into. You can only build a field where their old posture stops working and stand with them while their body learns a new one. So here are 5 real points that help you apply this. So take these if you take nothing else. 1, practice over insight. That satisfying click of finally understanding something is the self-help industry's main product, and it's a trap. The click changes nothing because understanding was never where the disposition lived. Repeated practice under real conditions edits a habitus. The insight is a souvenir from a trip you didn't take. 2, environment over willpower. Your dispositions come from your conditions, so the highest leverage move is to change the conditions, not grind your teeth against them. Build the room and the behavior follows. Lean on willpower and you've sent the old self into a fight with the new one and bet on the old. 3, the body is the lever, not the trophy, because it runs both ways. How you stand makes how you feel, makes how you think. Deliberately changing how you carry yourself under stress is one of the most direct routes into your inner state. Not the body as the goal of the work, the body as the instrument of it, the lever you pull to move everything else. 4, slow is the feature, not the bug. Habitus is durable. Real change moves at the speed of repeated conditions, not the speed of motivation. The slowness isn't a personal failing, and it isn't the method breaking, it's structural. Anybody promising fast identity change is selling you the look of a changed habitus laid over dispositions that never got touched. The slowness is the proof it is real. 5, read before you prescribe. The goal is to understand the body you're in, what built it, what changes it. Before you know what to do, you have to know where you are. Take the time to read your own state, to notice how you respond to a given room before you reach for a list of exercises or a program. Knowing where you stand is what lets you pick the right move. I know the objection because it's the standard one. Isn't this just determinism, a fancy French way of saying people can't change? They're whatever their history made them, so give up. And the answer is clearly no, but the honest one is more useful than the comforting one. Habitus is durable. It's not fixed. It changes slowly through conditions instead of words, and always through the body. That difficulty isn't a reason to give up. The difficulty is the reason it's worth doing, because it's hard, because it's rare, because almost nobody's willing to do it the real way. That's exactly what makes it worth it. The fact that you can't shortcut it is the same fact that makes it real when you earn it. Everything faster is theater dressed up as transformation. So back to that man from the start, standing in front of me, telling me he's just not an athletic person. I don't argue with him anymore. He's not lying, and he's not even wrong. He's reporting accurately on the body he has and the history that built it. What he doesn't know yet is that the report isn't permanent. The chest can learn to open. The breath can learn to drop. The eyes can learn to hold a room. And when the body learns to carry itself differently, the man inside slowly, not suddenly, stops being the one who said that sentence. Not because I convinced him. I gave up winning arguments against bodies a long time ago. He changes because the conditions changed, because he moved before he felt like it, over and over, until the moving rewrote the feeling and the feeling rewrote the thought. And one day the sentence just didn't fit him anymore. He'd become someone the old words couldn't reach. That's the work. You don't think your way into a new self. You move your way there. Then you turn around and the person who started walking isn't the person who arrived.